June 4th, 2019. I'd like to close the executive session and reconvene the public meeting. The purpose of the executive session was to discuss real estate for consideration of sale, purchase, or lease pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101C, 0, I should say, I guess. No action was taken by the commission during the executive session. I'd like to take roll call at this time. Commissioner Bell?
Present.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Here.
Mr. Briscoe is present. Let the record show all three commissioners are here. Do public comment? Do we have anyone?
We don't currently have anyone signed up for public comment.
Wow. Nobody wants to say anything? Oh, jeez, okay. I guess I'll announce the meetings at this time, because I think we've had some changes, I noticed. The next Marina Advisory Committee meeting is on Tuesday, September 10th, 2019 at 6 p.m. here in the Commission Chambers, Harbor Center Building, 1801 Roder Avenue, Bellingham. The TAC, Technical Airport Advisory Committee. Next meeting is Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. at the ARF Conference Room, 2005 West Bakerview Road, Bellingham International Airport. The BIAC, Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee. Next meeting is also on Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at 5 p.m. in the ARF Conference Room at 2005 West Bakerview Road, Bellingham International Airport. And I believe those two were changed just recently, correct, Sunil? Okay, yeah. So if anyone listened to the last time I said that, that has been changed. So with that, Diane, if you please.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Bell, do you have anything?
I don't at this juncture.
Mr. Shepherd, do you have anything?
I just want to note it with D, we're continuing to make work towards the safety upgrades on the Harris Street crossing, and we get a lot of questions and comments about the rail crossings, and just wanted to flag that as something we're continuing to fund and working towards. That's it for me, though.
Agreed, and I have nothing. So,
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Bell,
Aye.
Commissioner Shepherd,
Aye.
Commissioner Briscoe's aye. Carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Like rats leaving a sinking ship, aren't they? They're running out the door. I know I took a shower. Proceed if you would, please.
Team from the State Auditor's Office here with us today. I'd like to introduce Julie Sterna and Elizabeth Corcoran, and they're going to give you the results of the most current audit.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Julie Sterna. I'm an assistant state auditor, and we're here today to go over the results of your audits.
Hold the microphone just a little closer.
Sure. But first, we'd like to extend our appreciation to port staff for their cooperation and assistance throughout the audits. For the accountability audit, we found that the port was in compliance with applicable laws, regulations, and their own policies. The areas we examined were tenant leases. We reviewed commissioner pay and found it was being tracked and payments were allowable. We also reviewed procurement for public works and professional services. We also reviewed the tracking and monitoring of theft-sensitive assets, and we also looked at self-insurance. We did provide recommendations to management. These recommendations were for safeguarding of assets and self-insurance. And these are best practice recommendations. They're not included in the audit report. For the financial statement audit, We found the statements were fairly presented in all material respects. We provided an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that we can provide. We identified no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses, and there were no instances of noncompliance. And because the port had a clean audit opinion and met the June 30th deadline, they are eligible to apply for the CAFR award. The port has received this award for over 10 years. For the passenger facility charges, we found that the port was in compliance with the requirements of this program, and we identified no deficiencies. We also performed a 2-year limited assessment on the port's Industrial Development Corporation. We identified no issues. The procedures that we performed are listed at the bottom of that page. Any questions before we move into concluding comments?
Commissioner Bell? Commissioner Shepherd? I have none, thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Corcoran, and I just have a couple concluding comments. We have a link here, and we provided it to you as well, where the report will be published. This is a subscription service. You can also sign up to receive notifications of other port reports or any other port findings around the state. When the report is published, it will also trigger an audit survey. And we do really value the feedback from our clients. We want our audits to have value. Tamara will receive the survey, and it is forwardable, so we appreciate any feedback with that. At the beginning of the audit, we estimated the cost for all the audits to be $43,300, and the actual cost will be $1,500 less than that, approximately. And that is due in a large part to the efficiency of the staff in working with us, and we were able to get things done efficiently and under budget, so we're very happy about that. Your next scheduled audit is to cover accountability, financial statement, federal programs as applicable, and the passenger facility charges again. We do have a higher estimate for that only because we're including the federal audit, which is just as applicable. This year, there was no federal audit. Next year, if there is no federal audit, the cost estimate would be to the same as what was this year. But we don't know then until we get there. So that's
Well, thank
what we
you.
got.
Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to have you folks around, and I commend staff for working with these folks and doing the great job that they do. Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, there's nothing better than a boring audit report. So
Agreed.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again to your staff and ours for 10 years running on that award. That's pretty good. Wow.
Does the trophy get bigger each year?
Yeah.
Will it be the 20th year?
I don't know what exact year it is, but I know we were receiving them before I got here, and it's been almost 18 years.
That's some good bragging rights. I like that.
Right.
Great.
Good job for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
So with that, I think Mr. Goldberg, and are you up, or?
Actually, we decided to do it in other business because there's not going to be a full presentation, so we can do it now. Okay, go ahead.
I'm confused. What are we doing?
It's just a brief.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sure, they want to show up.
So I'm Jennifer Novak. I'm the Research and Communications Coordinator for the Economic Development Department. Something that I've been working on since I started on December 31st is this brochure. It was essentially the brainchild of Don when he came here for his interview. And what we're trying to do with this is not necessarily tourism, but really to showcase the economic diversity of the county, and also to give the small cities and the tribes a chance to really tell their own story, talk about the things that they value and what they're working towards, how they see themselves essentially. And in order to strengthen our partnerships and to educate people about what we do. I've actually been going around to various places to drop these off, but also to do a short training and presentation on what our department does and what economic development is, and then a little bit about what the situation of the county is and that specific place. So far, I've been to the Blaine Welcome Center, Birch Bay Chamber, Mount Baker Chamber, Ferndale Chamber, the airport, and I will be going to a bunch of other places over the rest of June. So I'll be giving a presentation at City of Bellingham, in the chambers at the end of June. I'll be giving one to the county as well for county staff. So we're really hopeful that this brochure will, minimally strengthen our partnerships and really educate people about what our county has to offer. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, I think it was very well done. I read through it this afternoon, and my compliments to everybody that worked on it to put it together. I think it's well put together, and I think the picture part of it is great as well. It makes it very interesting, and then which is what makes it work. Commissioner Shepherd.
So how's this gonna get to people outside of our county?
So one of the things that we're hoping to do is that for investors that are interested in coming, this is definitely something we can send them. Even if they put a factory in Ferndale, maybe they want to live in Linden after reading this, and just knowing about some of our other, options that might not get press. BTC and WCC both noted that they would actually use this to attract faculty hires. So when they're trying to get people to come here, to actually show them some of the places that they could live and what our community is like. So that's our general plan. We also have an electronic version that's been posted to the Port's website, and we also have posted that to the Choose Whatcom website.
Mr. Bell.
I'm good, thank you. Look great.
And wanted to mention that we have a couple of stacks of them over there. We've ordered a lot of them. So please, if you have clients or anybody. Another thing, and I want to thank Jen because she has done an incredible job. It was a really hard lift to get everybody to cooperate and to get the designer to do the work at the level. Jen did a lot of the design herself, so she did a great job. But aside from bringing business in, this is really, the message is that Whatcom County is open for business, and we're a highly diverse community, and that we have used this to join our different communities together with one regional message. So
I think it was very well done, Jen. Thank you. And very, very good ideas. Thank you. Okay, I believe that moves on to our action items.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Crete Consulting Incorporated to perform the remedial design and permitting for the I&J Waterway cleanup site in the amount of $699,934, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized budget of $769,927.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ben Howard, Environmental Project Manager, and I get to be the lone action item for the day. Today, I'm presenting the action item for authorization to execute a professional services agreement with Crete Consulting for remedial design and permitting for the I&J Waterway cleanup site. As shown in the opening slide, the site is located within Bellingham Bay waterfront, between Bellwether and the Central Waterfront Peninsula. And the site is shaded there in yellow. So the I&J Waterway site was identified by Ecology as a listed MACA site in 2002. And in 2005, the Port and Ecology entered into an agreed order to complete a remedial investigation and feasibility study. And then the project was put on hold in 2007 for an extended period of time while Ecology and other agencies engaged in a process to update the dredge material management program, which is basically open water disposal. And then an agreed order amendment was developed in 2012 to restart the project, to complete the RFS. And then the RFS was approved in 2015. And this year, Ecology finalized the cleanup action plan, and a new agreed order was finalized following the recent public comment period. So the new agreed order was effective April 29th, 2019, and the Port and Bornstein Seafoods are signatories to the agreed order and have also entered into a cost-share agreement to perform the work under the agreed order. And the scope of work includes the remedial design of Sediment Cleanup Unit 1. And I'll kind of go into more detail on that in a little bit. This includes approximately 18,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment and offsite disposal. And in order to do the dredging, the bulkhead and the dock need to be demolished, and then following dredging, it'll be replaced. So this figure illustrates the overall areas of the site cleanup and the different components. So the yellow shading there shows the area of dredging and the bulkhead and dock replacement. And that's the scope of work under this agreed order and this PSA. The other areas show the cleanup for future design and implementation. And they include the purple area, which is an area of monitored natural recovery. So sediments from Nooksack River coming in and depositing. The blue shading shows the area of enhanced natural recovery, where a thin layer of sand is placed to accelerate the natural process. And the green shading shows the area of capping at the head of the waterway. And this again illustrates the Sediment Cleanup Unit 1, which is the focus of this agreed order in this PSA. So the next step is to authorize the PSA to perform the remedial design and permitting services. And the port advertised an RFPS and received 7 responses. Crete Consulting has been selected as the most qualified consultant, and Crete is a new consultant for the port. The scope of work includes to perform a design level investigation, to collect additional information for the design, such as surveys, geotechnical data, and additional sediment sampling. Develop an engineering design report, which is it's an ecology deliverable, and that this provides additional design details. Complete the 30% remedial design, and develop and submit the permitting documents. It's planned that the project permit submittal will take place following the engineering design report. And the project is fully funded through an existing remedial action grant and the cost share with Bornsteins. And it's also anticipated that the PSA will have future amendments to adaptively manage the scope and budget. So, thank you. Address any questions you may have.
Well, I have one, Ben. You said we had 7, correct, 7 people returned bids on
Yeah,
this?
we did have 7 on this
I
RFPS.
can't seem to find the 7 bids that were returned.
Normally, we get the breakdown of the others, but
Right.
I didn't find it in this one.
So these are for professional services, so they're not dollar bids. They're proposals. Under the law, we have to select the
Okay.
most qualified proposal and then negotiate the contract. Because they fall under a different RCW. They don't give you a dollar bid like a personal service contract. These are professional services, architects, engineers, landscape surveyors, landscape architects. So there's not necessarily any dollars yet on any of these numbers until they pick who they want to negotiate with. If they can't negotiate a successful bid with the most qualified proposer, then they have to go to the next one and work their way down.
Yeah, so the proposals we received were qualifications-based. And
Okay.
then following selection was negotiation of the scope and budget.
Okay, thank you. Didn't get that memo.
And
News to me.
what were the team that put together the qualification? Who looked at all the qualifications? Was it you and,
It was myself, John Gibson, and Bornsteins was representative as well.
Bornstein had a seat at the table?
Yeah, they were included in this one, which is,
I believe it was Jay. Jay was at the table with
yeah,
you?
Jay Bornstein, yeah.
Okay, that was good then.
Yeah, and it's a great firm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're excited to work with Creek.
I think you did a great job selecting, so.
Any further questions, Commissioner Shepherd?
Just remind me about the cost share. Does the cost share only affect the cleanup costs, or does it also play into all of this design costs? 'Cause,
Maybe I
the
can
cleanup
answer
costs
that.
are gonna be significant, but this is also a decent chunk of money.
So this cost share is for this next chunk of work to get to a cleanup plan, essentially.
Yeah, it's through the design, permitting, and plans and specs. Basically, the work outlined in the agreed order.
So this will lead to a point where a public work project could be bid. And what's going on here is that we're working cooperatively with our tenant Bornstein, and they're working, should be said, cooperatively with us. They have some historic insurance carriers, 4 of them, all located in most all of them located in the state of Connecticut. And so they're funding this half of this work, and then the college is providing a grant for the other half. And we've jointly settled on a consultant, so we know the data will be acceptable to everybody.
Okay.
Yep, well said, Frank.
Okay, so the 50-50 split happens for this portion and then the next stage as well.
We haven't agreed on the next stage.
Okay.
I think Bornsteins are very reasonable folks. It's just that their insurance companies say, well, let's see how this comes out, and then we'll talk about the next stage. So,
Baby steps.
Yeah.
baby steps,
One
right?
step at a time, but, all right, thank you.
So could we back up, Ben, to about the colored, yeah, that one will work. So when we get into this project, actually get to where we're doing the project, is everything going to be done at once, or are we doing this and you have colors here, and if clarification for me, are we going to be doing this in separate times or everything at once?
Yeah, so the overall, IJ waterway cleanup with ecology is broken up into 2 phases. And the first phase is the dredging, and that's the yellow shading there with the red outline.
Okay.
And that's what this scope of work is
Okay.
geared to. And then in the future, we'll do more towards the head of the waterway work.
So my question is more towards the head of the waterway. Are we going to do more dredging in there?
There will be limited dredging to match the bathymetry of the sediment, match it with the upland. The plan is to put a cap down, so there'll be limited dredging and then place a cap on top of it to make sure the grade's all
Why
maintained.
would we not do all the dredging while the dredge equipment's here? It seems to me it would be cheaper than having those folks come back, or is this the way we have to do it?
Yeah, it's the off-site disposal and just different parties and kind of coordinating all that work. Ecology kind of directed us as well to break it up into phases.
So there's another potentially liable party, actually the insurance companies for Olivine Corporation. And their historic carrier is involved in the area near the upland waters. It's kind of different constituents of concern, and we're in contact with them as well. And the most practicable alternative there is what Port Staff is working on. So
Okay.
we had to kind of take it in pieces so that we get something done.
It seems to me that those companies would get together and it's cheaper to do it all at once, cost everybody less money. Am I thinking about that wrongly?
That was somewhat the port's thinking, but it's not necessarily the insurance company's thinking.
Okay, so basically it's pushback from an insurance company that's making this into more than one project. It's one project, but it's broken into phases because of that. Is that how it works?
It's somewhat complicated by what ecology wants to do, but
Okay.
I will say that Bornsteins have been pretty cooperative.
Right.
It's just trying to deal with
Right.
a lot of different parties.
Right.
And I'll just say from personal experience, I think insurance companies are trying to find either a way out of this or a way to save some money. And at the end of the day, it's gonna end up costing them more. But I've yet to see
Well, that's
this
what I was
tactic.
getting at. It seems like if they
This tactic
used a
is
little
not working.
common sense, they could save money on their end and we could save time.
You're talking about insurance companies.
Boy, oh boy.
Logic doesn't necessarily apply.
What was I thinking? I'm sorry.
Well, I do want to add on to the comment about the phasing too. It will be really important, especially in this design phase, to work with Bornsteins to, phase the dredging and the dock removal and the bulkhead. So we'll be working really closely with the Bornsteins to, around their operations to make it.
Really, the heavy lift here was the Bornsteins coming back to the table and-
Yeah.
and agreeing to do this, so.
Yes.
Well done here from the port side.
And what, I think you answered my question, but I'll ask it anyways. So we have a plan worked out for Bornstein's folks to do business elsewhere while they do not have a dock? Has that been worked out?
Yeah, and that will be one of the first things we do as far as the design. We'll be working with Bornstein on how to do that, whether it's more, trucking in or, how they want to do their business while we're doing the cleanup.
Okay, very good. I just want to make sure that was as part of the plan there.
Do sediments in both the yellow and green have to be treated with upland disposal? I know the yellow, it sounds like the yellow does. What about the green?
That will be part of the design. We're definitely going to look at, if there's more efficient way to dispose of the sediment, if there's other, resources locally or, that we can use.
So,
Right now, the plan is for offsite disposal, but we will be looking at that in design if there's a better way to do that.
So I think your question was, it's all got to be upland, correct? Mm-hmm. It all has to be upland disposal?
It does have to be removed from the I&J waterway and placed somewhere else, yeah.
Right, it can't be taken somewhere and disposed of in the water, I guess that's the
Yeah,
question.
exactly, and that was part of the reason why the project was put on hold back in the mid-2000s, is because of the dredge material management program. They were looking at open water disposal and the docks, and issue came up, and so this sediment would not be available for open water disposal.
I believe that's your question, correct?
Yeah. So in the past, dredging materials, if they qualified, they could be disposed of in open water.
Yeah.
And that's been pulled back to none or very
Yeah.
limited.
Exactly, yeah, there was some sampling done, in the early RI phase, and then the open water disposal requirements were changing, and so there was a look at how to address that sediment, and it was determined that open water disposal wasn't an option, and so that kind of prolonged the project during the mid-2000s.
You can still dispose of dredge materials in the open water if it's not contaminated. The port has an agreement with the Lummi Nation that we won't use the local, what's called a PISDA site. So we have an agreement with the Lummies that was probably 2005, 2008, something in there, that we won't use that site. But other people could use it, and certainly there is open disposal available other places. I think the Bellingham cold storage, Squalicum waterway dredging is going to be disposed of in Rosario Strait.
So those are non-contaminated sediments that.
Correct.
ability to be.
There were some sections of the Squalicum that were contaminated that will have to go upland, but the balance of it can be disposed of in open water.
Really, further questions?
No, I think it's time to get this party started.
Mr. Shepherd, any further
I don't have
questions?
any further questions, thank you.
I have no further questions, thank
Will
you.
there be any rent reductions for the bother to the
You said you
people over in
didn't
the
have
Bellwether
anything
building?
else. Shh. Diane, if you please.
Approve a motion to authorize the executive director to execute a professional services agreement with Crete Consulting Incorporated to perform the remedial design and permitting for the I&J waterway cleanup site in the amount of $699,934, plus a 10% contingency for a total authorized budget of $769,927.
That's boggling, that number.
It's a lot of money, and
Commissioner Bell.
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Briscoe's aye. Carries 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to other business, unless we have another action item I'm not aware of. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna pull rank and go first on this one. I have a few things. First thing I'd like to speak to is that, do you remember what day it was you spoke over there? What was gosh, remember that? Paul, do you remember when the common threads?
I believe it was last Wednesday.
Was it last Wednesday? Okay. Well, last Wednesday, we had it was broadcast on KGMI. It was a sit-down talk by Commissioner Bell was there, Doug Thomas, and Mr. Paul Burrell were there.
Wednesday, the 22nd, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So it was 2 Wednesdays ago.
Okay, on Wednesday, the 22nd. And this radio show, as well as audience, it was in the cruise terminal, was very informative, and people that watch this commission meeting on YouTube should go to their site, Common Threads Northwest, and you can podcast this or you can watch it on YouTube video. Very informative. Commissioner Bell did a very good job talking about the Port of Bellingham and things to go on in the future, some of the stuff in the past. Mr. Doug Thomas from Bellingham Cold Storage, the CEO there, did a very good presentation on the hatchery systems and what we could do in our area to enhance fisheries for fish capacity, fish availability, whatever you would like to call it, for the orcas, the Lummi Nation, and other folks that would benefit from that hatchery. Mr. Paul Burrell did a very good job in explaining some of the issues surrounded with getting folks to work, the availability of folks to work, some of the issues that in our society have come forth and created problems for our young people to get jobs, training, and so on and so forth. So if you get time, I would highly recommend taking a quick peek at that. It was very informative. Mr. Burrell, well done. Mr. Bell, well done. The next thing here on the list. I had a meeting with the Blue-Green Alliance on the 29th. And there's a question that was put to me, and my familiarity with the subject that I was questioned on was a bit vague, and probably rightly so, because I don't think anything's really been fully settled on it. It had to do with our shipyard that has gone into bankruptcy over here in the pension fund. And the question was put to me by the Labor Council, and I've asked our Executive Director Fix if he could maybe speak to that, as well as maybe Mr. Schmelik could also, of kind of where we're at with that. What the question to me was, what becomes of the people's pension, and what kind of deals are made, and is this common, and so on and so forth. So
Maybe I can start by putting it in an overall context, then Director Fix can speak to it. So what we're talking about here nationwide is called multi-employer pension plans. And there are a lot of them. They're guaranteed by the federal government, by the Pension Guarantee Corporation. It's common in the construction trades, shipbuilding, electrical workers, refinery workers. So these are plans that many employers belong to. And over the years, they had actuarial predictions of how well their investments would do, and they became underfunded. So if they looked at the cohort of people who are going to retire, they would predict how well their investments would do, how much they would need to pay people when they retire, and all of these plans became underfunded. So Congress passed a series of reforms, one requiring a different way they calculate actuarially how much money they're going to get, and and how many people are going to retire. Number two, they impose what's called withdrawal liability. So in most circumstances, when an employer ceases to do business, ceases to belong to the plan anymore because they get rid of their employees, they cease to do business, or they cease an operation, they pick up a amount they owe for their share of the unfunded liability based upon a number of hours and years that people have worked in the plan, the theory being that employer underfunded their contributions over a number of years. So that's the general thing that's happening. The other thing that's happening is the Pension Guarantee Corporation is underfunded itself by Congress, so there's a problem. And so then they created successor liability. So if say, for example, you're in the shipyard business, you stop doing work and somebody else picks up with the same employees, the same facility, the same equipment, the same customers, there's 7 factors. If a court finds that you're essentially carrying on the same business, then you pick up that underfunded liability. You don't have to pay all the money right now, but if you ever went out of business, it goes all the way back to where it first started. And so that's generally the situation in the United States. The theory is it's kind of being resolved over time, because with the change in the regulations on actuarial and calculations, that over a period of time, these multi-employer pension plans are going to get healthy, and it's going to limit this liability. It's actually the same flip side to what you hear about public employee pension plans. Not in the state of Washington, we're pretty good about it, but if you hear about Chicago or Illinois or some of the other states are underfunded. It's exactly the same theory behind it. So that's generally what happens. And then, Rob, I don't know what the current status is, if you do.
Well, the current status is that we've got an entity, the Puglia Shipyard, that is bankrupt, and the property is being run by a court-appointed trustee. The trustee is currently trying to work with the bank on how to get rid of their assets and recover the most amount of money for them, trying to work with the pension funds on how to recover the most amount of money for the pension funds, and trying to work with us on recovering money with us. It's a tough job when there's not a lot of money to go around. I will say that to the extent that everything were to cease operating there today and nothing starts operating there tomorrow, the pension funds will get zero. To the extent that we can sign a new tenant up and they can negotiate an agreement with the trustee and with the pension funds will get something. Will it be the amount that the liability actually is? No, but no one in this deal got the amount that they were owed. Unsecured creditors really got screwed. The secured creditor is going to take a major haircut, and we took a haircut. So I think it's safe to say that at the end of the day, the pension funds won't get everything that they may want, but they will be involved in negotiation, and they will fully have to agree to any kind of a settlement. But absent a settlement, there will be no operations at the shipyard, and there will be no employment there, and then there'll be nothing going into the pension funds.
And the reason for that is if you're a shipyard operator and you said, golly, that's a pretty good site at Bellingham, I'd like to expand my business, you go and say, what's the unfunded pension liability from the previous folks that have been there? It's not just Puglia, it goes all the way back, probably to MCI, and back then, nobody, it just kept, and somebody says that number is X million of dollars, and if you go out of business, you owe X million of dollars, and they're going to say, wow, I mean, if I'm successful, I just keep paying the pension payment, and and it works itself out over 20 years or something. But if I ever go out of business, they're going to come to me and say, you owe for all the time that shipyard has been here. So people are reluctant businesses to put their money down because they're going to use the same equipment, the same customers, the same employees, and they're going to pick up successor liability. At least there's no way to get a decisive answer that you're not, so you have to go to the pensions and say, could we reach some accord here?
So the extent that it's a similar business, that successor liability comes into play, and I could be wrong here, but I don't believe if you have a very unsimilar business, different employees, different equipment, different use of the property, then that successor liability would not be in play.
Correct. So if somebody uses that to make turbine blades for windmills or whatever, it's not the same. There are 7 factors that the court looks at from a case about a hotel in Hawaii. It's the same location, the same business, the same employees doing the same job, using the same equipment with the same customers. That's 6. I forget what the 7th is, but you can imagine if another shipyard operator steps in and wants to do business here, they bear a certain amount of risk, and that's why they all go to the pensions and say, we don't really want to take this risk. Could we reach an agreement? And then the benefit to you is we'll start hiring employees and paying into your pension. So that's what's going on.
So if someone's making a non-like product, we might get people back to work there, but there would be nothing being paid into that pension fund to make whole those employees from the past.
Correct.
If it sits, oh yes, go ahead.
So essentially, there has not been a deal reached by anyone because we do not have someone looking at the yard yet.
To our knowledge, no, but that doesn't mean they didn't reach it without consulting us. Eventually, they'll have to come to us, but they haven't today. I don't believe there has been a deal, no.
And no wonder I couldn't answer the question because it took two people a few minutes.
And we're not sure we got it right.
Yeah. And so it was the Labor Council folks that asked me. They're concerned about this, and probably rightly so. So I wanted them to be able to hear the answer from both the legal counsel and yourself, Director Fix, that this is what is going on, so that they know what is going on. And I'd also like to point out once again, and we've spoken to this before, the Port of Bellingham had no action by the Port of Bellingham caused this particular company to go bankrupt. It was their own decisions by buying into a shipyard in another state that they acquired all this liability. It's nothing to do with the Port of Bellingham. We've basically, in layman's terms, we bent over backwards to help the company at Fairhaven Shipyard site succeed, and it didn't happen. So I'd just like to point that out. Commissioner Shepherd, you had some questions?
Let me just add to that, by all accounts, this was a successful shipyard, pretty good workforce, doing a great job, stable. The impediments to a new shipyard coming in are, number one, whoever comes in has to deal with the secured creditors and cut a deal to buy the assets, and then has to deal with the pension funds to get some certainty about what the rule will be before they take the business risk. And then the port's always been the minor part of that. From what we hear, we're happily give somebody a lease. It just have to solve those two pieces of the puzzle first.
Big pieces. Commissioner Shepherd, yes, question.
So, the two options of either the yard sitting unused doesn't pay into that pension fund, a non-like operator doesn't pay into the pension fund.
They may pay into another pension fund or not have a multi-employer pension plan. We don't know.
Yeah, and really, it's going to be, it's very financially challenging to get a like operator to come in and assume that pension liability and continue business. And so we're really, I think it's really a bind, and what I appreciate Commissioner Briscoe speaking with that group, and I spoke with them last month, and they're an organization that cares very deeply about having pensions funded. They have employees who pay into these funds their whole careers, and they expect to have something coming to them when they are ready to retire. And it's a shame that the bankruptcy process can hang workers out to dry like that. But that's part of the reality we have. And I do think our staff and the commission has worked as hard as we can to negotiate the best deal for all parties moving forward.
Well, at your direction, we told the bankruptcy court, and I told the bankruptcy judge down in Tacoma that the port's two most important things were preserving jobs for the workforce, number one, and number two was protecting the public treasury, in that order. And so we played along, if you will, and the judge told us we were extremely cooperative to say, we'll leave this open, take partial rent, to see if we can keep that workforce together until a new shipyard buyer would come in and just take the whole thing as a whole and keep operations and keep the contract. So that was your direction, that's what we did, but it just got to the point where they ran out of work, and nobody could crack the nut of the pension plan. No new buyer came in and said, well, I've reached a deal, or I'm willing to take the business risk, whatever. So that's where it is right now. As of June 1st, the port took control of the site again. We have an agreement with the bank, as you know, to allow them to store their stuff there, and they pay us rent to do that. But again, we're not the impediment to this. It's really trying to find somebody who can crack that issue of the unfunded liability. And it was, I might add, Commissioner, it was generated, the unfunded pension liability was generated over decades by both pension funds miscalculations and employers underpayment.
Commissioner Bell.
Kind of like Social Security, only without the taxing authority, right? Yeah, I have nothing other than to say I hope we do find somebody quickly, and I know the staff is working diligently on replacing that workforce, and all credit to them for doing that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That explains, I think, if those folks were watching, that would answer their questions they had, and hopefully we can get those people back to work, because that really is the most important thing to the commission.
And, you know, if the Labor Council wants to discuss further, feel free to call me.
Very good, thank you. Two more things to go, and then I'll be done with my stuff. When I became a commissioner, one of our first meetings, Commissioner Robbins had a piece of paper distributed, which we have in front of us now. It's called the Commission Code of Governance and Conduct. Basically lays out how a commissioner is requested to act and do our business. And it was brought out, and we read it, and I think we were given a little bit of time, and then we signed it, if I'm not incorrect, and turned it into Director Fix, rather.
There was a resolution passed approving it, actually, at that time.
Is that what it was? Yeah. So I think it's my fault this wasn't done when you gentlemen came on board. As senior commissioner, I should have brought this forward at that time so everybody could look at it, agree to it, and sign it. I don't think we need, or we don't need to do that this evening, but I think at the next meeting, I'd like to wind this up if you gentlemen are good with everything. If you're not, we need to probably discuss it then. I think it's actually a good piece of paper. I was a little bit at first, but as I read through it, realized that there's a reason for these things, and we should all be aware of it. And I apologize for not bringing it forward shortly after you both were sworn into office. One more thing, and it's kind of sticky, I guess, but last meeting, I asked both my fellow commissioners if we had agendas. And, well, it was I said what I wanted to do, but the other two didn't say much. But there's something that troubles me that took place after that. And Commissioner Shepard, it was with you. I asked if you had agendas, and you said you kind of put it off, but shortly thereafter, which the next day, you started speaking to legal counsel about a salary for a commission. And I feel that is something that should have been discussed with your fellow commissioners before you went where you went with it.
Okay.
Public funds were spent, although be it not much. Okay, that stuff's not budgeted. I feel that respectfully to Commissioner Bell and myself, you should have spoken with us prior to doing something that will greatly affect us in the public eye. We took this job knowing what we were going to get paid. To discuss a salary increase for the commission should have been something I feel, I don't know how Commissioner Bell feels, but I feel should have been discussed amongst the three of us, whether it was here or at another public meeting, before we went to council and asked them what we could do or couldn't do. So maybe if you could explain a little bit of your thought process on that to me, it would
Sure.
relieve a little bit of the tension I have about it.
Yeah. So the commission compensation is something that I've discussed over the past year. Rob and I have discussed it a few times, and I know that legal counsel, which also represents the county, has been working on a review of county council compensation. So I've been interested in what that process is and what their findings were. Ultimately, I would like us to have a further discussion on it ourselves, and I appreciate you bringing this up today, for us to be able to discuss what our intended steps forward are. And I think what I'm seeing is that other municipal governments that are similar to our peers are reviewing compensation, and there are a number of different models out there. And the one the county council has in place, which is really just information I've been learning, is they have a commission that sets the salary. And that's different from how we do it. That's different from how the city does it. And my information gathering process has been trying to figure out how that works.
I guess my question is, why didn't you involve your fellow commissioners before you went further down the road with that? I don't
Yeah.
understand. I
Yeah.
mean, it's respectful, at least in my mind, it's respectful to include my fellow commissioners. If I have something that I want to find out, and it's going to involve possible increase in monetary contributions to ourselves from the public's money, I certainly would want to discuss it with the two fellows that sit next to chairs next to me before I discuss it with other folks.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit set back at that, that's the way it went. And I would ask you in the future that you please do not do that, that you consider that we're in the same rowboat with you, and whatever you turn over or stir up is gonna affect us.
Yeah.
So-
Well, my intention was to bring that conversation back once I had done some information gathering, and then to have that as the discussion. But hearing from your comment, bring that approval process to the start.
Right.
Is
I
what I'm
mean,
hearing from
It's
you.
just like the
Yeah.
head nod process we use.
Sure.
You know, let's make sure we're all on a page with whether we're all interested in it or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's why there's three of us. If two of us aren't, or one of us isn't, and two of us are, well, then it goes with that. But we need to stay with that process.
Yeah. Sure. Well, I can hear that. It's certainly not any decision-making involved that could happen unilaterally. And so I didn't see any harm in doing that information gathering process. But I see your position,
Well,
and I'd be happy to respect it.
It's a small town.
Mm-hmm.
Things get out, and I hate finding out our business from other people. That's not the way it's supposed to work, and that's the way it worked, and I do not like that. I don't
Yeah.
think that's proper protocol. It's non-transparent, which we have tried very hard, staff and all of us here at the port have tried very hard to keep that transparency.
Yeah.
And when this particular type thing happens, it's not very transparent, and it doesn't set a good example.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate it if we could do that differently in the future.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, and, ultimately, I think we should be looking at compensation, and I think that's a discussion I would love us to have in the future.
Well, we can have it now, because I disagree.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think that we don't have enough money to fix what's broken in this port system now. I don't think I need to put any more in my pockets. In fact, I don't even charge for my meetings.
I know.
There's not enough money.
Yeah.
So to discuss compensating myself for something I volunteered to do will never ride with me.
Yeah.
It's just not where I'm at. So, Commissioner Bell, any comments on this?
Well, my only comment would be that I'm not a fan of the independent commission. I think we're elected. And if we decide we're going to give ourselves a raise, we ought to be voted out of office if that's not popular. So I'm a fan of being accountable to my own vote for that process, so.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, I have nothing else. That's all I have. So Commissioner Shepherd, do you have something in other business?
Yeah, and for the, compensation, I think one thing I would like to see is to make sure that elected service is attainable to a variety and a diversity of people. And so I think part of that is compensation. And so if the compensation remains low and is significantly less than value for other equivalent elected service or just employment as a whole, we may see a trend to only having elected officials who can afford not to be compensated very highly for their time, which means we may get older people who are independently wealthy or retired.
I can't raise my hand for that part.
And I certainly aspire to be both independently wealthy and retired one day, but neither of the case are for me right now. And so for me, I think when we're considering equity and inclusion of who is represented and aspiring for diversity in terms of the type of representation we see in elected service, I think we have to make sure that people can afford to do it. If you have to work, like I do, I have to take time out of my other jobs that all certainly pay more to be able to do this. And I knew that when I signed up for it, and everyone knows that if we approve a pay increase, it doesn't affect us until the next time you're elected. And so it may never affect you
What are you saying?
if you don't run again. Or,
Is that a shot across the bow?
so,
That's okay. Look at a big ship. Commissioner Bell, anything to respond to now?
Yeah, it is public service. And I think we're a little different from most government agencies in that we have a full-time staff. One of the things I would hate to do is create a full-time job for a commissioner. So the next thing you know is we're trying to do his job and her job because it's a full-time job. And really what we are is a commission that oversees, as a CEO would oversee, or as a board would oversee, more so than it would be a full-time job. I would hate to see this become a full-time job for somebody, because then I just know that we'd be into his shorts more than he wants us. I think we're probably already there. But I do think that it is a public service, and really what attracted me to this position is that it's a public service. And it's not a job. And it shouldn't, I don't believe it should be a job. That's just my perspective.
So, and I would respond, I think when the folks at the state level set up the port authorities, I think that there was no compensation involved because they wanted people that cared about where they live, the people where they live, and how to make it better for them. We do get compensation. The insurance is a big part of the compensation. We get paid, I think if you attended all the meetings we could and asked for the compensation for those various meetings, we'd be in the $15,000 some odd dollar neighborhood unless I'm incorrect. That's $1,000 plus a month. This job is a public service, as Commissioner Bell spoke to. I think if you start paying money, more money, a salary for this position, you're going to maybe attract people that don't care so much about the county or care about the people in the county. Because to put up with what we put up with as commissioners, you've got to care. You've got to have fairly thick skin. I think, as we see in many other government agencies and levels, the compensation involved, people are doing things just to keep the job. They're not there to do, and we see this, they're not there to do what they're supposed to. They're there because of the money. Not that we could get to that level here of compensation, but if you increase it, I believe, enough, then people are going to be there just because it's a job, it's about the money, it's not about the county and what needs to be done in it. And we have a mission statement that needs to be fulfilled. And I think you have to volunteer your time to fulfill that mission statement, or it will not be done correctly. That's my opinion on why there's a low level of compensation for a commission position.
okay.
Wouldn't be long before we'd be asking for an office in a private jet. When we do own the airport.
Can I fly it?
No, and I just think if we're going to do a compensation discussion, we should take a look at what other ports are doing around the state and do a comparison to that.
And staff has already done that.
I think I emailed that out,
Yeah,
did you not?
I mean,
Yeah.
this is something that happened quite a while ago. And so we already know where we stand in juxtaposition. And all I got out of my conversation with legal counsel was, what did the county council do? And so all they did is they have a commission that's made up of staff and citizens that set their compensation schedule, And theirs is going up significantly. And that's what that independent commission decided to do. And so I found no other information outside of that. So I really didn't see any harm in it, but.
I think John Sitkin is who you talked to. I think he was on the commission or something?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I didn't know.
So I've always been a firm believer, kind of live by this rule. I don't have to do what everybody else does. And I think as a commissioner, you've seen me kind of operate in that mode. I don't want to be the same mortgage rates as everybody else just because they can charge it, just because it's there. What's good for our county, what's good for our industry here. I don't want to be the same rates as everybody else. I want to make sure what we do as a commission is good for our tenants and good for our county. Just because they can do it in King County or they can do it in Skagit County or they can do it in some other county doesn't mean that we need to do it here. What works for this county is what we need to do, and that's where I want to be. Anyhow, anything
Yeah.
else, sir?
None on that topic.
Okay. We've whipped that dead.
I think
horse
so. I
dead,
think
so
we're
we
done
can
with
move on
that
now.
one. Are we at our 5:30 public comment?
I guess we are. So shall we take a short break? Is that what I'm hearing?
Should we check and see if we have any comment, or what would you like to do?
I think we should power through.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Some of us need sleep.
This may be going a little too far for customer service, but someone's locking their bike up. I'm wondering if he's coming in. We don't usually get people biking down here, locking up their bike for no reason.
Looks like he's leaving.
Maybe he's leaving? Is he in? Is he out?
No, he's just taking something out of that green Jeep out there.
I hope it's a pile of bills on the right or passenger seat.
Nobody signed up?
No.
Okay.
I guess we'll continue on as a general consensus? Very
Okay.
good.
That's mine.
Any public comment? No public comment? Anybody like to say anything? No? Okay. Continue on with your other business, Commissioner Shepherd.
So at the last meeting, I had a question about, for Sunil and some of the airport staff about use of a foam at the airport. And we've had a little bit of discussion over email, and I wanted to bring that back to the public discussion as well. So I had asked about a particular foam that is in use at airports. I was under the impression that it was being phased out at SeaTac through my conversation with a firefighter from that airport. And my question was, if we were going to be phasing it out, do we have the ability to do so? And what FAA requirements are we under?
Good afternoon, Commissioner Sunil Harman, Airport Director. Yeah, Commissioner Shepherd, we did exchange some emails, and for clarification, I guess, for the group, the FAA specifies the AAAF, which is the aqueous film forming foam, and it's a foam that's used by the military. It's a foam that's used by civilian airports. Now, there is an alternative type of firefighting retardant foam that's used and authorized by ICAO at international airports, but it's not specified by the FAA. Our research shows that while this foam does have environmental impacts, we don't use it with the frequency that a military base would use it. We're restricted to use it only when needed in the course of responding to an aircraft accident. And fortunately, those are few and far between. And we have protocols to clean up the foam after the event. For training purposes, we go to an authorized site. We go to the BP site. So we have an agreement with BP to train our staff in dispensing the foam from the 3 aircraft rescue firefighting trucks that we own and operate. With respect to where we are with a change in the criteria, the FAA has not come out and said that they are going to allow the use of the alternative foam. There is information out there that shows that because of the way these molecules combine when they're dispensed, they act differently. The foam that we use creates a net that smothers the fire, deprives it of oxygen. The foam that's used under IKO creates suds, creates bubbles that form a similar, but the application is slightly different. It takes longer. Anything, as I indicated to you, anything from 16 to 20% longer to put out a comparable fire. The U.S. continues to use this foam. The risk is that it can get into groundwater and contaminate groundwater. It's happened at 49 or so bases, military bases around the country. The closest to us is Whidbey Naval Station, and they provide, to adjacent homeowners, they actually provide potable water because of the well water contamination. So it is a significant issue. But we have to weigh the benefits of responding to a catastrophic fire in the event of an aircraft accident versus contamination of groundwater. And until the FAA's testing labs come out with a better alternative, we are essentially stuck with using this material.
And it's not just groundwater, it's also health and safety for employees.
Yes, it's a known carcinogen, like many things in our environment are. It's been traced back to thyroid-type cancers. It's been traced back to prostate-type cancers. It lingers in the body if it's not handled properly because they're large molecules. The idea is to go to some smaller molecule that flushes out of the human anatomy faster. Yeah. But it's very much in the developmental stages. There isn't an alternative out there. Now, this movement to go to an alternative, we found out, is not a SeaTac airport movement. While SeaTac uses the same foam we use, we talked to the Aircraft Rescue Firefighting Command over there. They asked us to actually join a working group, and there is a national working group to offer our support and participation in that working group. But they weren't soliciting any letters of support or anything. And as I'd indicated to you, this has been an issue that's been out there for many, many years. And it continues to be an area of concern.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would encourage us to support that national effort. You know, if cities and municipalities, you know, in one fire department we have the city which isn't using this foam and the airport which is, and I would love to see a comparable alternative that was able to be better for the employees, better for our environment as well.
Certainly.
But it's not a decision that's in our hands.
That's correct. It's not in the hands of any airport. It's not the size of the airport. This is the federal regulator, the Civil Aviation Authority, that determines what is best for aircraft events, and that's a federal regulatory agency.
Well, I appreciate the information. I had told the members of the union that I would research it and get back to them, so I appreciate having that information.
There are a number of...
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're asking us to support this as a commission because you said you'd like to support that, so are you asking us to go along with you to support this movement?
I would like us to see if there are alternatives that are going to be sufficient for our airport. And it sounds like we are not there.
I'll speak to Sunil's point. There are companies all over the country trying to fix this. And right now, there is nothing comparable. What is nice about that foam is it lays down over the top of the fire in a smooth pattern to just snuff it out in ways that they can't replicate with the current, and it's because of its molecular structure.
Yeah.
It's an amazing fire retardant, especially when it comes to fuel. So trying to replace that in a catastrophic event is just being very difficult. But trust me, there are companies all over the country trying to come to the table with something that works. They just don't have it yet. And so the problem isn't that we just don't have anything to support.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
We don't have it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the international standard, US and worldwide, is you have to be able to evacuate an aircraft in 90 seconds after an incident.
Yeah.
15, 16, even 5 seconds matter when there's an engine on fire or wing on fire. And our purpose as first responders is to actually knock down the fire first. And if there was something comparable or better, obviously we'd use it. Of course, it would have to be, again, regulatorily specified.
Right.
And if there is a new foam, it's not something we simply adopt into our trucks. There's significant changes in the infrastructure, so we might end up having to buy new equipment, new filters, possibly new rigs. We don't know what's out there.
Do you know what they do in Vancouver?
No, I don't. I can inquire, but I don't know what they do there. That's the
sounds like-
Canadian authorities, so they could easily comply with ICAO. The US is unique. The FAA is very unique relative to global world standards, but we're also the standard setter, right? So, yeah.
So that global standard that exists, the ICAO, other airports could, on an international level, choose to ascribe to that standard if they chose.
Yes.
And they would still be in compliance with that.
Right.
That standard, and individual countries may have their own different standard as well.
Clarification, there's only two types of foam that's available right now. It is the standard that we use in the US, the FAA specified aqueous film forming foam, and then the alternative that ICAO has. That's the other problem. If manufacturers aren't providing or supplying it, it's not profitable, then it's not easily available. And we have only one standard here.
And it would be profitable if somebody came up with the right answer.
Right.
Airports across the country would adopt it.
Sure.
Because nobody wants to be in this position.
So I would have a question along the lines of the topic here Commissioner Shepard has brought up. The suits that our firefighters at the airport wear when they respond, can this stuff penetrate that, or are they wearing, when they respond to something like that, are they suited up that this stuff cannot get to that individual that's responding, or can it penetrate their gear they're wearing?
No, that's a good question. If they're wearing their firefighting gear, it's impervious to most chemicals, including the foam, with the right footwear and the right. They also, in many cases, are wearing a SIBA gear, which is augmented breathing gear with tanks. It's when you mishandle the stuff
Correct.
That it can be a problem. And it's continual exposure. That's the other thing. We just don't have that sort of situation.
Right. So really, the only people that are at risk are the ones you're trying to save, getting them out of there, and they're through it fairly quickly, and it's not a prolonged contact.
Only for a short period of time.
And if they do have contact, I would assume that they're showered, washed, cleansed with something to remove it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and one or two contacts is not considered. I mean, you'd have to have continual.
Right.
We're seeing these physiological effects in people, in firefighters that do it on a continual basis on an aircraft carrier deck or on a military flight line, and they train with it regularly and that sort of thing.
So that's kind of what I wanted to get to with the intermittent use that we subject our firefighters to here, and if we were to have a crash, I mean, the risks involved with the safety side of using this, the safety side far outweighs the risk because of the intermittent contact, correct? Right. Thank you. Thank you, Sunil.
And again, quite frankly, the greatest danger is also downstream because it is so soluble and it liquefies so quickly in water, and its migration is faster than oil, it's faster than just about any contaminant that we've seen. So it's the drinking water that really is the source of most of the exposure to this chemical, not as much the fighting team.
It's ingestion, yes.
Right. They'll drink it through their drinking water source. They'll take it internally, more so than it will be from a contact.
Just out of curiosity, how many times have we had to use that foam in, let's say, the last 10 years?
We actually looked at that. In the last 4 years, we've had 2 events that we used the foam, one at a very limited level. The other is fairly significant because it's adjacent to a fueling facility and it infiltrated into our stormwater system. So we spent quite a bit cleaning it out afterwards and capturing it all. But over the 10 years, I suspect less than 5 times.
Okay, so it's very intermittent.
We've been fortunate. I mean, that's just statistical
I mean, in the perfect world, we don't want it to use it and let it get away, but in the imperfect world we're living in, it's the best we can do from what I'm hearing.
Now, we do have annual exercises where they're geared up and they're in the rigs. They don't really get out of the truck and handle this stuff. They just fire it at simulated fires in a training facility.
And that's at BP, at the training facility?
That's at the BP training.
So it's contained there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sunil.
Yeah, appreciate the information. That's it for me.
Commissioner Bell?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my
Uh-oh, here we
discussion
go.
I'm going to first of all announce that we do have our budget meeting, so anybody watching this that actually wants to watch paint dry,
Should I go like
Join us
swing,
on-
batter, or what?
join us Thursday, because it will be like watching paint dry, but it will be our budget meeting. And again, I'm anxious to start discussions about what our capital program and what our fiscal pocketbook looks like, because I'm keenly interested, and you
Looks
guys
like
know it,
that.
in-
Big
in
hole in it.
in saving money for bad times. And if we can find ways to be creative about capital expenditures that we have moving forward, you're going to hear this, probably time and time again, and I don't want to be a clanging gong about saying no to some things, but if I do, it's because I want to make sure that we are fiscally responsible for those times when we need the money and when we need the jobs in our communities. So that's, again, I'm also asking anybody who might be on the other side of that issue to come join us and argue about why we should be spending more money now. Likewise, anybody who wants to take my side of this and say we should probably save some money now, I invite you to come out and take a look, because it's important that the public be involved in this.
And they got to bring their own sandwich, right?
They do.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points of clarification there. One, yes, you got to bring your own lunch. We only have enough for the staff. Two, they're typically, and this is up to the commission, but there typically is not a public comment period at the budget retreats, so they're welcome to come watch, but we don't usually engage the public at
Agreed.
those.
Gentlemen, are we through with the other business? I have one more thing in it, and I'd like Director Fix to speak to. Was he shared some very good financial news with us today, and once again, it points to our staff and the fine job they do trying to take care of the public's money and get the best bang for their buck and save as much as we can anywhere. And Director Fix, if you would, please.
Yeah, so that was the second time today I heard like watching paint dry, and I must be a fairly boring person because I like the budget reviews, and I loved watching the bonds price this morning. So I like watching paint dry, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, we refunded $20 million worth of existing debt that was issued in 2010. It was refunded to an estimated annual savings. Well, the original estimate was about $1.7 million, and over the past couple of weeks, interest rates have dropped. And then this morning, it oversold. So many people wanted to buy our debt because we're financially healthy and a good organization. Who wouldn't want to own us? So many people wanted to buy our debt that they're able to go back to those buyers, negotiate an even better rate, and our total savings over 10 years for that $20 million will be $2.4 million. Tamara gets the credit for that one.
That repairs, repeat that for me one more time.
$2.4 million, Tamara gets the credit.
Saved in one day. Finance.
Probably, what, 10 minutes? I mean, it was not a long period of time.
Those jokes are paying off.
They were, well done.
Well done, Tamara. Good job.
I'm done.
Commissioner Shepard, anything further? That's it. Anyone wish to say anything? Meeting adjourned.